Hi, I'm Louis Jett, WVU Extension Horticulture Specialist, and we're at the WVU Organic Horticulture Farm. It is midsummer, but we're thinking about growing our fall and even winter vegetables here at the farm. So now it's time to start thinking about these crops that we'll be harvesting in mid-autumn, even overwintering in some of these raised beds or these cold frames that we've constructed here at the farm. So this time of year, it's late July, early August, we're starting to grow some of the cole crops, the family that is related to cabbage, as a fall crop, and maybe even some cases, such as kale, we're trying to overwinter it into a deep winter. So we're starting with our raised bed that we constructed here at the farm earlier this spring, which is a 4-foot wide by 20-foot long raised bed, and we have framed it with cinder blocks, and we have filled it with a mixture of compost and topsoil. And we also added some peat moss to it as well. The top surface of the raised bed is primarily peat moss and compost because we want the surface to be weed-free, so we don't have to do a lot of hand weeding. So your choices for fall vegetables are pretty extensive. We can start off with crops like broccoli and cabbage and kale and Brussels sprouts, and the collard greens could also be grown. Cauliflower is a popular fall cole crop. So you have many options to grow these fall and winter vegetables. And what we're looking at here at the farm specifically is growing these vegetables in a square foot planting arrangement. So we're actually evaluating square foot gardening in raised beds here at the farm. And so square foot gardening has many advantages, particularly if you have limited space to garden, if you don't have a farm, or if you don't have a lot of property to make a garden, you can construct a raised bed and then just grid it off into these 1-foot by 1-foot squares, and then plant these vegetables inside of these squares, intensively planted. So we have some of these vegetables that we're ready to plant. We actually even have some of our summer vegetables that we're still planting for fall, such as our summer herbs. The basil is a common herb that's planted through the summer, so we're also planting that. Here in midsummer, you also have time to plant cucumbers, summer squash, and even peppers on some varieties of peppers. So as we go over to the raised bed, we start looking at the area that we have to plant. And the great thing about raised bed gardening is you're able to put the amount of fertilizer that you need per square foot, rather than putting a lot of fertilizer down that may be wasted by the crop, by not being used by the crop. We're actually able to fertilize each square foot section individually. And that's what we did in this particular case. So no area of the raised bed is wasted space. All of it's being used for growing food, and also can be used for growing flowers too. It's an excellent place to grow flowers. So when we begin planting, we start out with a really healthy transplant, something that's been grown either by you or by a greenhouse. And we're making sure that the transplants are healthy, disease-free, they have no insects on them. And then we're being pretty selective on the transplants that we use. So we have a wide array of vegetables that we can plant, some that I already have mentioned, but also other things that I haven't mentioned yet, such as the leaf lettuce, and we also have head lettuce that we're planting as well. So a lot of these crops can be grown deep into fall, even some of them overwintered, if you provide enough protection. So the nice thing about square foot gardening is, like I said, you're gardening square foots at a time, 1 square foot at a time. And what's really cool about it is crops like broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage, they're planted 12 inches apart. So one plant occupies 1 square in each of these square foot gardens. And then you can interplant some of these vegetables around this larger plant and use that space underneath of the plant. So we have a vegetable like broccoli or cauliflower that likes full sun, and then we're planting around it vegetables that like partial sun. And so we're intercropping, planting 2 or more plants together in the same space throughout the growing season. And that is a great way to use raised bed gardening or square foot gardening in that case. So we can start off with, this is a broccoli variety. We have 2 broccoli varieties, Pac-Man, and we have Emerald Crown. Emerald Crown is what we recommend for planting in summer. It's a heat-tolerant broccoli variety. Pac-Man is more of a fall variety, so if you're planting a little bit later in the summer, this Pac-Man may be a good variety to grow. So we essentially will take it out of the transplant tray. Again, making sure it's a healthy transplant. Looking at the roots, making sure the roots are nice and white and that it's not pot bound. The roots are not wrapped around the ball here, the root zone. And then we're going to just take the individual plant and plant it in the center of each of these squares. And we're only planting as deep as the root ball of the individual crop. So in each square, we're either planting a cabbage or a broccoli or a cauliflower or even a Brussels sprouts, which is an excellent fall crop as well. And then we can plant either seed or transplant other crops around that plant. So we could transplant the lettuce. This is a variety of head lettuce that we have. And then we can just transplant it around. So we're able to plant 4 to 6 lettuces per square foot. And if we're doing carrots, which I have some carrot seeds, carrots are seeded, so we can plant 9 to 12 carrots per square foot around that individual broccoli plant. So we have 2, maybe 3 plants growing in the same space at the same time of the year. So we could do the lettuce. We could also transplant some of our kale in there as well. And these are transplanted 6 to 8 inches apart. So with square foot gardening, when you're planting more than 1 plant per square foot, you're just planting individual plants, in a grid. They're equidistant or equal distant from each other. So if I was to do the lettuce, I would do the lettuce every space 4 to 6 inches apart in that square. So in this case, I don't have my ruler, so we'll just estimate that we're going about 6 inches from that. And then we're planting that. So we're just filling that grid or that box with plants, and we're allowing these plants to grow together throughout the fall and even into the winter. So the broccoli can be harvested in October and then removed, and then it could be replanted with something else for winter, such as spinach. So spinach would be an excellent crop to seed now. Here we are in August, in mid to late summer. And then you can have spinach for fall production, but you can also seed spinach in a raised bed in a square foot garden through mid-October here in West Virginia. So you can plant fairly late. So you have a wide selection. It's like these are fairly large plants. So this is another variety of broccoli. So they get fairly large. So they'll occupy the whole square foot, but they'll partially shade the plants underneath of them. So then I also have some seed. So carrot seeds. I highly recommend gardeners buy pelletized seed, particularly these small seeded vegetables such as carrots, because it's much easier to sow the seed by hand when it's pelletized like this. So when we have a pelletized seed, we're seeding carrots 2 to 4 inches apart, and then we can just drop a seed, just keep dropping the seed about 2 to 4 inches apart. And then they're all 2 to 4 inches apart down the whole square. In the end, we can have 12 to 16 carrots per square foot when we're done seeding. So in addition to having 1 broccoli or 1 cabbage plant, we're also having some carrots growing in with it as well. So you can do the same thing with spinach. So we're going to put our seeds back. So if you have spinach seed, you can also sow it or transplant it. So, particularly this time of year where it's hot, the summer is hot, you may want to pre-soak the seed in water about a day before you plant it. Or what we often do is just chill the seed, put it in a refrigerator, chill it before we're ready to sow it. Because we're talking about crops that are sensitive to heat for germination. So you want to have cool seed. If you can't have cool soil, have cool chilled seed before you sow it around the plant. So spinach is planted, same as carrots, 2 to 4 inches apart. And we're just sowing it sort of in an equal spacing between seeds. And so the spinach is going to benefit from the shading it gets from the larger plant. And there's not going to be much competition at all because the broccoli or the cabbage or the cauliflower is actually rooting much deeper than the spinach or the lettuce, or even in that case, some of the carrots that are growing around it. So it's a great way to do companion planting inside of a garden and using space very efficiently for growing food. So square foot gardening is a great option if you have limited space and you don't have a garden or a field or a farm. So that's what we're investigating here at the farm, just sort of investigate individual planting in squares versus just traditional planting in rows. The one potential disadvantage to square foot gardening is that you may have to do a lot of hand weeding if you don't use a soilless mix to grow your vegetables in. So that was why it was important we started out with a compost and an organic peat moss mixture, because we had no weed seeds in it and we were able to square foot garden without any of the hand weeding that you normally would do. So hand weeding is labor intensive, it takes a lot of time, so make sure you have a weed-free surface if you're doing square foot gardening. So there are many resources available to gardeners that want to know more about square foot gardening. We have workshops here periodically at the farm throughout the year, so you always can check with the extension calendar to see if we're having a workshop that may be demonstrating square foot gardening either out in these raised beds or our high tunnels that we have at the farm. There are also some popular press books that are available on square foot gardening that go into the specifics on how many plants are sown or transplanted per square foot, and I highly recommend looking at those. But it's something to try. If you haven't tried it before and you have limited space and you like to garden, square foot gardening may be a good choice for you.